What is up, guys? Welcome to another edition of Q&A. And this week, it's a rivalry week. It's Ravens week. It's the first division game of the season. It's a road game against the Ravens. I'm so excited to watch this game and see what the Browns do. And since it is that, there have been a ton of questions that have come in. So I'm just going to jump right into it and start with the first question from the Catster, who says, should Freddie let Todd Monken call plays? This is a difficult one because after the game on Sunday, I would have been right there with you. I would have agreed that Freddie needs to give up play calling responsibilities to Todd Monken. But as the tape has come out and as I've seen people look over the tape and analyze it, it looks like the root of the problem really isn't Freddie. The root of the problem seems to be that this is just a completely different offense. This is a new offense that the team is trying to learn, and they're going through new offense growing pains. I think the problem, since Freddie Kitchens got retained and became head coach and retained play calling responsibilities, it gives off this impression as if this is the same exact Todd Haley-based offense that the Browns ran last year, when in fact that's not necessarily true, and they can't really run the same offense because they don't have remotely the same personnel. I know they added Odell Beckham, but look at how much change has happened in the tight end group behind Njoku. Like, there is serious personnel changes that have just completely changed what this team is going to be able to do. So, again, I think it's just going to take time. I think we need to be patient with Freddie. I think he can call a good game. I think he just has to get over his woes. Again, it was his third game coaching in the NFL. He's going to make mistakes like that in his third game. You know, we have to allow a first-year head coach to grow. We can't sit here and, criticize him as if he's coached as a head coach for 10 years. We knew that he was a first-year head coach coming into this, so we have to understand that sometimes there's going to be some woes that come in. Just hopefully he's the right guy to get Baker right and to put this team in position to make the playoffs at the end of the year. So I don't know if Freddie should give over plays to Todd Monken. I don't think that necessarily is the whole issue there. I think the issue with the offense is more that it's new. But good question, Catster. The next question comes from George Mendy, who says, do you think OBJ will go over 1,000-yard receiving this season? Absolutely. Yes, 100%. He is already on pace, I believe, to do that. He is a dynamic talent. If he stays healthy, I see no reason he won't go over 1,000 yards. So, yeah, I would agree that Odell Beckham is definitely going to go over 1,000 yards this season. Next question comes from Billy Moss 6 on Twitter, who says, in a perfect world, the Browns would beat the Ravens. Do you think with that win, the Browns would be exempt from hate? If not, what else would they need to do to prove themselves? Look, the Browns are always going to get hate. The Browns could win the Super Bowl this year by 40 points, and people would still hate on them because of the very nature of who is the face of this team. Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham are magnets for criticism. That is just a fact. That is just what's going to happen when those two guys are the face of your team. So no matter what they do, they're going to be criticized. So that is just something we as a fan base have to get used to from the national media. Just like I don't think one or two games can prove a narrative about a person, I don't think one or two games can disprove a narrative about a person. I think if the Browns want to get rid of this perception of them or stop this talk, they have to consistently win big games throughout the year. They have to go to the playoffs, win some playoff games, and they got to get it done in the biggest moments. And it might take years for them to finally, be exempt from criticism like the Patriots are. It should take years because that's what you have to work for as a franchise to become that. But, as for the time being, the Browns just got to win games and play hard. Next question comes from Christian Rutloff, who says, how important is it to have Randall back in the lineup? Seems like the backups held their own outside of Whitehead, and Randall would be able to stop a lot of those passes to Cooper Kupp. So I think it would have made a difference if Greedy Williams was in there on Cooper Kupp. I think he might have been able to stop one of those touchdowns. Again, that's how close that game was last Sunday. One player probably could have changed the outcome to that game. But, Greedy Williams wasn't out there, so Cooper Kupp was able to go off for 2 touchdowns. But with Demarius Randall being back, I think it is huge for this week, especially because the Ravens have Hollywood Brown, and Demarius Randall is the type of guy you need when there's a guy who could take a top off a defense like Hollywood Brown. So that is going to be critical for the Browns. That is a huge comeback. That is a huge win for the Browns to have Demarius Randall back healthy, back practicing. They really needed him. I think with the Rams, they weren't able to hurt the Browns as much with that hurt secondary because, one, Cooper Kupp is a guy who's going to work short to intermediate, not really deep. And Brandon Cooks is super inconsistent as a deep threat. I think Hollywood Brown is a much better deep threat, so having back Demarius Randall is definitely going to be a huge blessing. Next question comes from Cleveland to Cali, who says, I would, but you never answer my stuff, ... on Twitter or on YouTube. Damn, man. You should have asked a regular question this week. I would have answered it, dude. I would have answered it, man. But, ask next week. I'll try to get you on. But it's got to be a good question. It's got to be a good question, All right, this question is kind of a two-part question. Comes from two different users on Twitter. I'll shout them out. This one comes from Matt. Matt, you got way too many letters at the end of your username for me to say confidently. But Matt says to me, any take on Freddie Kitchens' identity change? The guy came in last year, protected Baker Mayfield, called 2 trick plays a half, used tight ends and running backs heavy in personnel, committed to the run, wishbone, gave Baker Mayfield confident. This year, no protection, deception, always 11 personnel, and Baker Mayfield looked scared. And Jason stepped in. And said, I've been wondering the same thing. What happened to the wishbone style stuff that looked so damn good last season? Very interesting. I don't know if anybody's noticed this, but the Browns don't even go to pistol that much like they did last year. And it's led me to come to a conclusion. Freddie Kitchens is the type of dude who's never going to put this on blast, right? Because he's the type of guy who wants all the blame on his shoulders if he's the guy in charge. But I think we have to understand this is not really Freddie Kitchens' offense. This is Todd Monken's offense. Look at what they're doing and look at what Tampa Bay did. They're very similar. I came to this realization after Sunday's game because I, like you, was super surprised that at no point in that when they were in that empty set on the 4-yard line to tie the game, did Freddie Kitchens try a reverse or some kind of trick play to Jarvis Landry? Even the trick play they used against the Panthers that worked really well in the goal line last year, I was surprised they didn't go back to any of those wells. It doesn't seem like Baker is playing out of the single back formation as much with twin tight ends. And I think this is because it's the Todd Monken offense, or at least a combination of the both offenses. And I think some compromises were made there as far as personnel goes, which limits the Browns' ability to be able to run certain sets. What I mean from this, and the best way I can explain this, is look at the personnel at tight end. Last year, the Browns had Seth DeValve, Darren Fells, and David Njoku. Seth DeValve and David Njoku are two running or wide receiving tight ends. Both can block, but both aren't great blockers. And they had Darren Fells. Darren Fells is a great blocker who can do some receiving. Since you don't have Darren Fells, and more importantly, look at the guys that they replaced Darren Fells with. They replaced Darren Fells with Demetrius Harris, who is a converted basketball player. They have Farrell Brown on the roster, who has never been a blocking threat as a tight end. And then they have Ricky Seals-Jones at tight end, who is a converted wide receiver from Texas A&M. So when you look at the personnel on tight end, you realize that these are not guys who can block like Orson Charles or Darren Fells were. So it leaves you in a situation where you don't have the personnel at tight end to go single back twin tight end and be able to use that effectively because your tight ends are not great blockers. It leaves you in a situation where you can't go into that pistol formation with the extra tight end on the line because your tight ends can't block. And with David Njoku being out, since David Njoku is probably the best blocking tight end on this team, which is wild to say, but he's the most capable on the team, it really hampers the Browns' ability to go to some of those sets that they went last year. So now it leaves them having to go 5 wide. It leaves them in all of these spreads, and that is what I think is part of the problem because the line is struggling right now. And in order to help the line, most of the time you need to what? Add a tight end in, add a running back in as well to help chip and give the offensive line some help when they're outmatched. But since the Browns don't have any blocking tight ends, they don't have a way to scheme up a lot of help for the offensive line, which has amplified the issues that they're having early on in the season. So some of this goes on the blame of John Dorsey because I don't think the personnel at tight end is there. And I would be interested to see if the Browns would consider adding more blocking focused tight ends to be able to run more sets that they're used to running. But I think that's the reason sometimes the offense doesn't look the same that it did last year is because there were some compromises made to fit Todd Monken's scheme into this offense in order to fit what Todd Monken can do and do well. There were some compromises made at certain positions, like the tight end positions, which meant that the Browns offense was never going to get off to a hot start because they're learning a new offense, essentially. And I think we just need to let this offense get through its growing pains. If you watch the film, there's a lot of stuff that's there. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be open. It's just got to be seen, and it's just got to happen quicker. And as this team figures this offense out, as they get chemistry together as a unit, and as they play more games together, I think this offense is going to start to look a lot better. But if you're wondering why this doesn't look like Freddie Kitchens' offense from last year, partly it's because it's not. It's a completely different offense. And look at some of the personnel compromises that happened to make it happen that way. But excellent question. Next question comes from Finchy, who says, do the Browns need a fullback? Was letting Fells and Charles go a mistake? Yeah, man. Again, I kind of elaborated this on the last question, but I think letting go some of that blocking focus personnel was a mistake because the offensive line has not been able to hold its own without help. And without guys like Orson Charles, Darren Fells, they're not able to scheme up the help necessary. I would really love it if the Browns did sign a hybrid fullback tight end type player so that they can have somebody they can have on the line when they go to some empty personnel. So that they can have somebody on the line that can block when they go to twin tight end personnel or go to single back. I think it'd be really great. I really hope the Browns bring in a fullback or a tight end kind of hybrid guy that can block, because I think that would be helpful to get this offense going early on in the season while they learn some of the intricacies of the Todd Monken offense. Next question comes from Hanson's Rough Riders, who says, do you think Freddie will add more quick slants and screens now or continue to stay as is and hope Baker improves and is willing to ride out his struggles? I think that's a game-by-game thing, man, because last week they did go to a lot of halfback screens, and they did try a lot of RPOs, and the RPOs were working. They just were scared to go to that well too much. But I think more importantly, this week, you're going to see a ton of screens, a ton of plays in the flats with Odell, Jarvis, and even Nick Chubb, because that is probably going to be the game plan against the Ravens, because that's what's worked against the Ravens defense. If you spread them out and stretch them out, there are some holes that you could take advantage of there, as well as making big plays against their secondary. So I think you're going to see a lot of that this week, and I think it's going to be an improvement from last week. I think Baker's going to look better than he did last week this week, so I would say stick with him. All right, guys, that's all the questions for this week. Thank you guys for asking them, and if you want to ask questions, follow me on Twitter or ask them when I put them up on the community post on YouTube. Either way is appreciated, but if you like what I do here, if you like what this channel does, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. And if you have a buck or two to spare, you want to help this show out, please consider joining the Patreon or buying a shirt like this awesome shirt I have on right now. Either way helps out the show a lot, and it's greatly appreciated. But thank you guys for watching. Have a great day, and have a good night.